In this lesson, we'll implement the platformer controllers in our game so that it works with the keyboard. On the next lesson, we'll add the on-screen touch controllers so that it works on mobile. So you'll end up with a game that works both on the web as a web game to play with the keyboard and as a mobile game. So let's begin. The platformer dynamics that I'm going to implement can be used for any kind of platformer games. Think of games like Mario or any sort of two-dimensional side view game where you have a player that jumps, that moves with the arrow keys or with on-touch controls on your phone. That can all be implemented with what you'll be learning in this lesson. The first thing we need to do is enable the cursor keys. Those are the arrow keys that we will use in our game. And we'll save that in an object. So you create this object and you type in this.game.input. That gives you access to an object called keyboard, and then create cursor keys. So after doing that, we can now listen to when the user presses the arrow keys, basically. And as I mentioned, where is it that you listen for stuff all the time that can be pressed at any time? That's an update. So we go to update and we'll listen to that here. Let me explain the main dynamic on how the platformer controller works. The player horizontal speed is always set to 0 unless the user is playing something, is pressing some key. So if you're moving to the side and you release the key, the player stops moving. That's how platformer games work. You could obviously make a game where if you press to the side and then you release the key, the player keeps on moving. That's up to you. But the more traditional approach is that when you say you walk a little bit and then you're not touching any key, so the player stops moving. So we want to set the player speed to 0 at all times before we actually increase it. We access the body of the player, that's a physical representation, and then the velocity object and X. That gives it a velocity of 0. Now what happens when you're pressing in a key? Say you're pressing the left arrow. So they will check for this.cursors.left and then is down, the is down property. The user is pressing the left key, then we want to set the player velocity to a certain value. What is that value going to be? It's up to you, of course, but it's the same in the game, so I'm going to add it here as a sort of like a constant so that you can easily change it in one spot instead of having to change the speed everywhere every time that you decide that you want to have a different speed. So I'm going to set a running speed to 180, and I'm also going to set a jumping speed to 550. This is jumping. Okay, so this will be minus this dot running. Why is it minus? Because left is this direction, so it's a negative direction. Now let's see if this works. There's some error here. Let's go line 14. Undefined is not a function. Create cursor. We're missing an R. So now I can move to the left. I cannot move to the right yet, but we'll implement that now. Left or right, you can't be pressing the two of them. You have to decide. So it's a place where we'll use the else if. So we don't want to have a situation where the user is pressing both sides. This will be right, and the speed now is going to be on the other direction. So see how now you can move to the two directions, and you can also fall and keep on moving. Let's implement jumping now. Jumping is basically giving it a speed on Y, and then gravity will take care of reduce that speed until it reaches a point where it starts to fall down. So you give it a speed up and it starts to move up, and then gravity is pulling it down, and then all of a sudden you have this parabol movement, just like when you jump in real life, that you push your legs and you have a speed up, and then gravity takes you back down. So that's exactly how it's going to work in here. This dot cursors dot up, so we're going to use the up key for that, is down. Let me just show you this, and then I'll make a modification because you will see what happens. So player.body.velocity.y, and we give it the jumping speed negative because it's upwards. I could have also put it at negative up there, but I didn't. So if I press up, you'll see that I'm jumping. But hey, what happens if I keep on pressing up? It just keeps on going up, and we lost it. That is because we need to also check that you are standing up on a solid surface. And there's an easy way to do that. This .player.body gives us access to an object called touching. So if touching is down, so if we're touching something down, like here, then we can jump, but we can't jump again. So I'm pressing the key repeatedly once we're already jumping, but if you try it as well, you'll see that it's not possible. So now we've implemented a really basic platformer dynamics. We can move, we can jump. Just with this, you could make probably all platformer games that were created in the late 80s or early 90s. They all work like this with obviously more changes, but this is pretty much the basic stuff. So just to summarize what we've done here, firstly, we enabled the cursor keys. And I know this course is on mobile gaming, but it's just so easy to add the cursor keys as well, and then you can just do web games too. So I'm opening you up to like another huge market for your games. Just enable the keyboard, and then you listen to when keys are pressed. The speed of the player on X is always set to 0 because when you're not pressing anything, I don't want there to be a speed. And when I'm pressing something, I want there to be a speed on that direction. And for jumping as well, but when jumping, I also want to check that I'm actually touching on a solid surface, and only then I can jump.